Are you ready for the Low Blows Network?
Hello there, and welcome to the first episode of another new podcast right here on the Low Blows Network, hosted by yours truly, Rick Nash. And just me, at least this week, to get us kicked off. You might have been tipped off to that by the fact that the podcast is named Nash, which is kind of like, I don't know, it was a mashup between like both. As you've probably seen the artwork by now, the Johnny Cash, the way his albums always had Cash on it, and MASH, the old TV show that many of you are probably too young to even know exists. It just sounds like those two things. So I just said, yeah, that's my second name. That's what I'll call this podcast, because usually with a podcast you want to get like a good kind of description of what the show's about for anyone who doesn't know. Like, who doesn't know you or doesn't know what you do. As they're coming in, you want to kind of explain what it is to them. But for this, it's like, look, you all know me at this stage if you're listening to the Low Blows Network, more than likely. And if you do and don't know me, like, what is it you're listening to? Like, because on the shows I'm not on, I tend to get slagged quite a lot. So you're probably at least vaguely familiar with my name, even if it's just through being ridiculed. And yeah, that's the thing with this podcast. There is no kind of all-encompassing topic that it's going to be about every single week. It's pretty much just the miscellaneous podcast. There's not even going to be a regular kind of schedule as to when this will air. It's more so a case of if there's stuff I want to discuss, I will discuss it. So you may have noticed that like regular Low Blows Network listeners may have noticed as the show got kicked off, we used the old Paddy's New Yacht entrance song written by the fantastically talented Tristan Carroll of Tune Sweet. And we used that, and he basically, you might have thought this is an episode of Paddy's New Yacht. Well, I hate to break it to you, but Paddy's New Yacht is it's gonna go live on a farm with loads of its friends that it's gonna have great times with, the likes of Smack Jade and the one with the podcast and other Low Blows podcasts of the past you may remember, and they're all gonna go live on a farm and play together. Well, mainly just talk about various topics like Friends and Dublin, Drimna, and yeah, sports. No, Paddy's New Yacht. It isn't necessarily going away forever, but it's gonna do a Ross and Rachel and take a break for a while. And it may come back at some stage, because I did love doing that show and talking about sport every week. But the problem is, as I'm about to discuss on this show, my life is changing and Kento's life is changing. He's just started a whole new career, moving away from the journalism. And our lives are changing, and it doesn't necessarily fit our schedules in the way it once did, especially with the amount of work that went into it. But we both liked doing the show. Mommy and Daddy are still going to be very friends, and we still are going to be friends, and we still love you all very much. No, we may be back in the future if it suits, but for now, this will be the space where I'll discuss sports, maybe with Kento, because like there's no mad drama or falling out. We're still friends. We still both love sports, and we still will want to discuss it, but we just won't be able to on a weekly basis anymore. So now the sports discussion is going to migrate somewhat to the Nash podcast, and basically when there's big sporting events that we want to discuss or whatnot, we will kind of cover that and everything else here. So TV shows, if I'm loving any and it doesn't fit elsewhere, if it's movies that I want to discuss, usually with spoilers and so on, it's going to be that. And we're going to have a rotating panel of guests if you know, Bill Simmons is a big influence of mine, especially with what he's done with the likes of Grantlanders. I'm looking to do similar with the likes of, on a much smaller scale, with the likes of the Low Blows Network. So if you know his podcast, the BS Report, it used to be called, I think it's just the Bill Simmons podcast now, and he does quite similar shows. And maybe in time, as I kind of settle into the format, we'll kind of start doing regular guests and regular benchmark type shows. We shall see. But today, I don't mean to get this kicked off on a bit of a downer, right? But I want to talk about something, and I've wanted to talk about it for a while. And I think it's important, and I think it's interesting, and I think it could be very beneficial to a lot of people as well, which is why I want to discuss it. That's mental health. Now, as a lot of you may know, nearly a year ago now, Jesus, is it nearly a year? Justy, go make new fucking podcasts. Everyone wants to hear them, right? That's nearly a year old now. Me and Justy did a podcast where we spoke about our struggles with mental health, and I talked in that about my struggles with anxiety at the time. And the weird thing is that at that time, I went on the air and was being completely truthful and said that, you know what, I'm actually doing quite well with my anxiety. I'm actually coping, I've developed a lot of things, and I'm doing a lot better. The thing was, I genuinely thought that. And then, less than 2 months after we did that show, and this is kind of tough to discuss, and this podcast is going to be very personal, but I've kind of sold myself on the idea of doing it now, and I'm recording it, so I guess we'll go there. I kind of suffered a breakdown. And I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about, you know, how I kind of was able to recover from it. Some of the causes from it. I'm not going to get too personal into my own personal life beyond what needs to be said for the purpose of the podcast, but I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about how even when I thought I was in control, I was not. I was a sitting duck, a sitting anxious duck, waiting to get absolutely lashed out of it worse than I ever had before by anxiety. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is a happy ending. You hear me today. I'm not putting this kind of happy persona on. I'm doing quite well now. And I've had a hell of a few months. And that might be strange to people who may have been listening to me every single week on the Low Blows podcast and whatnot and heard me seeming quite happy and quite fine. It may be strange for people to discover. And I guess there's somewhat of a lesson in that as well, in that I was able to cope and function and act like everything was fine when things really, really weren't. But again, the plus side of this is, at the end of it all, at the other side of it, I realised that I had a story to tell. And that story is positive because I don't know if me and Justy were guilty of this. We certainly went into the mental health podcast with the best of intentions and armed ourselves with as much knowledge and preparation as we could because we realised how important it was. But I think a lot of mental health podcasts, I think, and we said this last year, I think a lot of them have the general message that, you know, it's okay to be okay and talk about it and it's important to discuss it, but I don't know if there's necessarily a step-by-step guide out there. Well, I've lived it. I have lived the steps for the past few months of my life. The highs and the very, very lows. I've lived through it all. And that's the story that I want to tell today. How to try and pull yourself out of a slump when life kicks your arse. Because I'm just a normal guy. And I come on and I might seem really confident and have all my shit together with like the podcast and the parties and stuff you guys may know me from, but I'm a weak motherfucker when it boils down to it, like, at times. But also in saying that, while I am weak and susceptible to life's up and downs as anyone else. What I've learned about myself is that I can also be strong when my back is up against the wall, and it has been. So let's start at the start. Let's start around the end of November last year, because like I said on the podcast with Justy, I was in a good spot, and that was taped around September, October last year. So around November, I was still in that happy, buzzy place. Life is tough, especially. I don't know if what yours is like, but for me, I find mine is like spinning a lot of plates at the same time, like with work, with family, with friends, with romance, with low blows, with my hobbies, trying to keep up with the stupid amount of things I'm nerdy about, and trying to balance all of them so that the end result is happiness. And I felt like as I was looking down the barrel of Christmas, I felt like I was doing all right with all of that. I was dealing quite well. The plates were all kept spinning. I was, stressed a lot of the time, that like trying to keep that all going. But I was happy, and that's where I was. And I'm a big Christmas guy, and I was looking forward to possibly the best Christmas ever. Like with everything I had planned, with everything that was kind of going right in my life. And then, in what seemed like overnight, and was literally the course of a few days, everything came kind of crumbling down. And to put it into perspective, what I kind of experienced, this may sound stupid, so bear with me for a second, and I'm not equivocating or saying that it was anything like this in terms of scale and impact, but just in terms of how I related to it. A few months after all of this, I was rewatching Game of Thrones from the start, because the new series was out, the last series. Let's not talk about it. But I got to the episode of The Red Wedding, which, okay, we're going to spoil Game of Thrones. I think enough time's passed. I'm not going to spoil the last series if you're rewatching, but come on, you should know what The Red Wedding is by now. If you don't know, you don't care, and it's fine. The Red Wedding is where Robb Stark, who is kind of rebelling against the king of the realm, he organizes a marriage of one of his key men to a neighboring lord who has territory that he needs to win the war, basically. The wedding goes ahead as planned, and then while they're celebrating, Walder Frey, who is the lord in question, what a bastard, massacres Robb Stark, his family, all of his men, and basically destroys his army in one night in kind of a massive twist. And as weird as it sounds, and again, I'm not saying my struggles were on equal par with this, they weren't, but as weird as it sounds, that was the thing that I'd seen or read or experienced that most closely reminded me of what I was going through. Because there's a scene in it where Robb is looking around at his life. He looks at like his wife tells him she's pregnant, and he's standing there madly in love with her. He looks over at his mother, and they've had their ups and downs, but this seems to be kind of a moment where everything's okay. He's thinking about the war and everything that's going on there, and he's finally like solidified a true ally that will help him. He's had his ups and downs within the bannermen in his camp, and they seem to be all coming together as well. Everything's coming up Millhouse for Robb Stark. And then in a split second, it's like, boom. Wife dead, child dead, army dead, mother dead, Robb dead. Everything just crashes within an instant, and he just doesn't know how to take it. And for me, that's kind of what happened. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to get into the specifics and the nitty gritty of the issues. And now we move on to the lawyers. No, I'm not going to get into the personal issues. But to put it simply, about 4 or 5 different areas of my life just seemed to that we're going on track. As far as I was concerned, and that I was doing everything right in, just kind of exploded overnight. And one example that I will talk about, because it's something that you guys may be familiar with and can relate to, is in terms of low blows. I kind of had the realization that I wasn't going to be able to ever do low blows as a full-time job, which is what I'd been working towards for nearly 2 years at that stage. And I'd been running low blows for 7 years at that stage, and obviously that was always the end goal, but I'd been devoting like 60, 80 hours of the week towards making it full time. And then I realized it's just not going to happen. And that was always a risk that I knew, and that I was like, right, there's a 70% chance this is never going to happen. And I was mentally prepared for it, and it was fine. But the problem came when I kind of realized this, and I'm like, okay, we knew this was a likely thing that could happen, so right, let's get to plan B, let's sort out your career, and let's see how that goes. And I kind of looked into my options in my career, and I kind of tapped up a few contacts that I'd had for a while, and everything came back. They're like, either we don't have anything for you, or you're in as good of a spot as you're going to be in as far as I can help you, or like, yeah, just like, long story short as well, it looked like my only option, because while I couldn't do it full time, I still love and do love doing low blows, and I never want that to end. And spoiler alert, you're listening to this in the Low Blows Network. Things worked out. But when I looked at my options, I was like, I'm going to have to give this up. I'm going to have to give this up, and I'm going to have to give it up soon. I'm like, it was November, and I'm like, WrestleMania. That's the last party. It's all gone. The podcast, everything, the network, the VOD, it's all gone. Because I don't have a move here, because the amount of work I put into it. I'll need to go back to college. I'll need to like retrain, or I'll need to look into building a new career, and there won't be any time in the day for low blows. And then it was like, that was depressing in itself, but the problem was as well the lingering doom of like, while that was the prospect that was depressing, also the way I'd work myself out of any ruts that I'd find myself in would be throwing myself into low blows. And I'd be like, this is going to seriously impact me in a bad way, and I won't have this anymore. Like, it's kind of a circle where, and this was the road, the mental road I was leading myself down, whether it was the case or not. And look how things worked out. Where I'm speaking to you, it didn't work out that way. There were other options, but you can't necessarily see it at this time. And that was just one of the things. So there were things to do with my personal life. There were things to do with, like, you know, where I live and how I pay the bills and my career and this and that. And every kind of the pillars of my life that I had, you know, we all get towards the end of the year where we start like planning out, right, what will next year be like? I don't know about you, but I like to set goals. And I didn't know, with everything that went down, what my life would be like on January 1st, on January 2nd, never mind a whole year away. I didn't know what it would be like in a couple of weeks, because things just seemed to fall apart. And that was pretty tough. And it was an example to me of how things can just blow up in your face and you completely out of your control, and you can just do nothing about it. There's no moves, there's no plan B. We aren't in control of every part of our life, and it doesn't matter how hard you work, it doesn't matter how good the end product of that work is. Sometimes life can just kick your arse. Life can just turn heel on you, and decide, no, we don't, you're not getting all of this happiness. And there's nothing you can do. You've done nothing wrong. You've done nothing to kind of deserve this. You're not a bad person. You've worked your ass off. But no, dead end. Sorry. Go another way. And we're not going to tell you how you need to go. And I'm not going to lie. I kind of wallowed. And I felt like a victim. I felt immediately when all of this stuff was happening. First off, I was anxious as hell. And I'll get into the specifics of that and how it affected me. But I also was like, I'm a good person. I've treated people well. I do good things. I'm sound. I work my ass off. I bet on myself. I did all the things you're supposed to do. Like, good things are supposed to happen to you, right? When you do all those things, that's what we're told. But the thing is, what I've learned since then is that the answer to that is yes and no. Because things won't always work out the way you plan and the way you want it to go. But the hard work and being a good person does count, but just not in a way that we necessarily see it in terms of getting the end goal that we necessarily want. We don't get to bend the world to our will. Sometimes we do, and when that happens, that's great, and it feels great for those reasons, and I've got to experience that, fortunately. But there are other times when it's like, no, this isn't the way it's supposed to be for you, regardless of what you've been planning, regardless of what you've been doing. The world is going to keep spinning, and it's going to spin the way it wants. You don't get to decide which way it spins. And that was a tough pill to swallow. But in time, I got to learn that there were rewards for the work I'd put in and how I treated people and been a good person. But first I had to get around my crippling anxiety. As I spoke about in the Justy podcast, I'll briefly recap because I'm sure you don't remember it, and who has time to listen to a 2-hour podcast as a preview for another long podcast talking about the similar subjects. I'd realised that I'd had anxiety a few years ago. And it was after there was a breakup in an old kind of toxic relationship that I'd been in, and I searched articles online in kind of that, like, you know, that bitter place you're in when you come out of a bad relationship, and I'm like, I have to find out what was wrong with the other person, and I looked up stuff about anxiety and depression, and I was like, oh yeah, that's probably what's wrong with them. And then when I was reading that stuff, I was like, oh no, wait, that's you. That's you, actually. You've got anxiety. And I was like, it was strange because I was like, oh, is this not normal? Is this not the way everyone lives? Like, I've always been a bit wound up. I've always been a bit of a stress head when things don't necessarily go my way. I'm not, like, a dick about it, but, like, I get stressed and I beat myself up and I can't sleep and I pace around the place and I do this. But I was like, everyone does that in their spare time. I don't know what anyone else's normal is. I'm only living my own life, but surely everyone does that. And I'm like, no, that's anxiety. That's a thing, and you need to learn to deal with that. So I learned about it, and I learned about, like, some kind of homemade precautionary methods I could put in place myself. One example I spoke about on Justy's show was telling people and being open with the fact that I have anxiety about it, and just, like, coming out with it from the offset. Like, if as soon as I get to know someone well enough, I'm like, hey, look, this is the thing with me. Sometimes I'll get it, and just in case you ever are around me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but what I did with it was the wrong way to deal with it, where I'd kind of, I'd tell them this, and I'd be like, hey, I'm getting anxiety, so come here, can you just let me know what the story with that is, or this or that or the other? And what I do is I just push the problems onto their shoulders, or I'd kind of overload them with my emotions just to unload them from myself. But that's not fair to do to other people, and it's not sustainable. People, like, even if they care about you, especially if they care, if they didn't give a shit, it wouldn't make a difference to them, but especially if they care about you, they'll then worry about you. As a result, they'll go away from that conversation and you'll feel better having got this off your chest. But at the same time, they'll go away and they'll be like, is he going to be okay? Like, what's going to happen with that thing? And then they'll take on your anxiety. So it's not a sustainable way to live in the long term. It can be something that you can kind of take into. It can be like something that you do occasionally. Being open about your anxiety is a healthy thing to be, but just unloading your issues onto like 1 or 2 or 3 close friends like is not a way to be, and it's not a good coping mechanism, because again, the more they care about you, the more they're going to worry and the more they're going to hurt. That isn't to say don't speak about your anxiety. It's just you've got to strategize like who you speak to, how much you're putting onto people, and everything else. And I've learned about that, and we will get to that. But what happened here was that I realized that these problems were on my shoulders. I've got great friends and family, really supportive, who were there for me throughout this time and were my absolute rocks. I'll get to how low it got. And these people being there for me and being on the other end of a phone or a text when I needed are what stopped the lows from getting lower, which I will discuss in detail. But I also realized that as good as it was to have these people to kind of guide me, and kind of when I was kind of numb and confused and not understanding what to do with myself or not having a way forward in a way that I always seem to have some kind of plan or harebrained scheme or something going on, and I just didn't. They were there to guide me and lead me, but at the same time, I realized that I had to get myself out of this. This was my problem. Nobody was coming to fix all the problems. No one was coming to solve all the issues, and that I had to. Whether I felt like I could cope or not, that was the way it was going to have to play out. I was going to have to figure this out for myself because it was my life, and I couldn't expect my family or friends to just bail me out and make important decisions for me and do this and that and the other. I had to make those decisions. I just didn't feel capable of it. The timeline of this was quite dramatic and traumatic. So if you want to put it, say, on December 1st, I was the happiest I've ever been. I was like, genuinely, this is all working out perfectly. Everything's coming up Millhouse. It's been tough to get everything right, but I think I've got it. I think I've got there. And then by December 10th, my life was over as far as I could see it. Everything I worked for, everything I built was gone. And I didn't know how to move forward. I was completely lost, empty, tired, and filled with anxiety. And the way I describe it for anyone, because a lot of people don't understand anxiety, they're like, well, just calm down, just chill out, like, just relax, like, don't be anxious. And like, I get it, because before I realized I had anxiety, I know people who suffered, and that'd be kind of my attitude towards it as well. Like, just don't be anxious, like, you don't have to be. But when it controls you, it's consuming. So the way I describe it is like, if you watch the Avengers, it's like Hulk and Banner. You know, both exist within the same body, but sometimes Hulk takes over. Though instead of anger, for me, it was more dread, worry, inability to focus on anything but the same problems going round and round my head. Like, literally just having the same conversations with myself, going through every possible scenario of how, say, for example, how can I make low blow survive but also get a new qualification? And I come up with every plan and plan for every eventuality, and then like I get to the end of that and then I just start again. I just literally go back and be like, right, let's go over it one more time in my head. Meanwhile, I'm a blank canvas. I'm a zombie walking around my workplace doing nothing, because this is all I can think about. This is all I can focus on. I'm daydreaming essentially, and I'm tense. My chest is constantly clenched. I'm pacing around the room. I'm checking out of work completely. I'm literally, sometimes I would pace around the room for like hours at a time. I'd just walk around my sitting room, walk around the same circle. I heard Stephen Colbert on the What the Fuck with Mark Maron podcast And he was talking about when he had kind of a breakdown with anxiety, and he said that he used to pace the same as well. And it got me to listen to this. It affected me because it was very similar to what I went through. And he's like, you just keep walking around the circle, because if you keep moving, you'll avoid it. It's like you're running away from it. Whereas obviously that's not the case. You're just actually engaging it, and you're just making it worse. Being unable to sleep was another big thing, which I'll get to. Recording like 10-minute voice messages for people. Like genuinely crazy stuff that I knew was crazy. And why I say Hulk and Banner is because I'm like a reasonably intelligent, self-aware, normal person most of the time. And like, I knew that this behavior wasn't normal, and I'm watching myself, and this is the Banner side of me. I'm watching myself and going, this is nuts, man. This is nuts. You need help. You are not well. But I'm not in control. That's the Banner voice inside of me telling me to calm down. But Hulk is at the wheel. Again, it's not anger. In my case, it's not anything destructive to anyone else but myself. But Hulk is at the wheel, and I can't take him out. I can't stop that. I'm alive within my own body and brain, but I'm not at the wheel. My anxiety is. And that's the difference. So for anyone who doesn't have it or understand it, but maybe knows people, you do know people who suffer from this. That's what you're talking, where they're not in control of their own brain. And it's tough to imagine that, because we always like to feel like we're in control. But you're just not. And the shit part as well is, I had to deal then with the emotional impact of what Hulk was doing, while knowing that I'm digging myself deeper and deeper and deeper. So if I'm in work, say, and my bosses are angry at me because it's Christmas and it's really busy and I'm not doing the job I'm supposed to do, I know this is damaging. Like, this is not... You are worried about your future career. Pissing off your bosses is not going to help. This voice is in my brain, but I can't just switch into gear and focus on the job at hand. I can't, no matter, they could tell me, and I'm like, I'm with you. I know. I really should be able to, like, cop on. But I couldn't. I wasn't there. And that happened in every aspect of my life. I just couldn't stop going through these issues in my head. I couldn't stop. That's why I call it a breakdown, because it's like, I only thought of it as a breakdown months after it happened, when I was feeling much better. But I'm like, yeah, I did. I stopped functioning as a human for a couple of months of my life. That counts. It's bad. But the one thing I am proud of from during this period, and I am quite proud of how I reacted to it, hence doing a podcast and wanting to tell my story. If I was ashamed, I probably wouldn't broadcast it. But the one thing I'm proud of in terms of in this period where anxiety is very much at the wheel for me is my decision making. In terms of long-term decisions with my life and the way forward, I tended to make the right choices. So, for example, I knew that I had struggles with drink before, that I spoke about also on the Justy podcast. And those struggles were caused by me drinking to medicate, which alcohol is not medicine. And it will only make things 100 times worse by giving you fresh problems. And those fresh problems may distract from the even bigger problems you're looking to run away from, so it might feel like it's better, but it's not better. Those big problems are still there and still need to be addressed. You are just now distracting from that by giving yourself smaller problems that seem less significant for your brain to focus on, but the big problems will come back and still bite you in the ass. And if you're not addressing them, they're only going to react however they see fit. You are in no control over that. So I didn't want to do that again. So I said to myself, don't drink. Do not, Look, it was Christmas time. It's like, I was like, don't use drink as a crutch. So I drank the normal amount I would for Christmas, but even then I drank probably less because I didn't want to be drunk. I didn't want to be out of control. I wanted to be able to manage myself somewhat because alcohol wasn't going to make the problem better. So I drank, I think I only, throughout this period, I think I only got drunk once. And literally that once was like a mistake because I was on medication at the time because I had a chest infection on top of everything else for a week. So I was on meds for that. And it took me worse than it did. Unfortunately, no long-term damage was done. But that's how careful I was. And I was proud of that. I was like, I knew that if I'd have gotten drunk, the way I am could be the way I am for 10 years. Because I'll just bury myself in that. And I'm 31 now. Maybe by the time you hear this, I might even be 32. 24th of July, send nice tweets. And I don't have the time to give up 10 years and become a boozer and this and that if I want to kind of have the happy life that I want to have, the happy and complete life and balanced life. So I'm like, no, you don't have an option here, just don't drink. So I was proud of that. I knew that I needed to do something and I had an idea of what that was, but so I managed to, while I wasn't dealing with it well in the terms of the day-to-day general decisions, the bigger decisions I was tending to come out on the right side. So it got really bad really quickly. Just to kind of tell you how low it got before we get to the comeback. I feel I want to give you a hope spot, guys, here, but sadly I had to live it, and there wasn't much of one throughout this period. So like I said, it affected my sleep. I couldn't sleep because I think a lot of people go through this. Like, as soon as I turned the lights off and I'm like, oh, all right, I'm ready to go to sleep. Like, it felt like I'd be tired and I'd be watching TV and I'm like, right, turn the TV off, turn the lights off, turn around and go to sleep. And then my brain's like, oh, hello there. Oh, I've been waiting for you because we have 500 problems and we're going to sort through all of them right now. And there was no way to stop that. And when I could eventually nod off for a few hours, I'd wake up worse than ever. Nighttime anxiety was a thing that I'd never experienced before, but it got me really bad here. So what it was like was, during the day, I was constantly anxious, but the likes of the pacing and stuff like that was me kind of trying to cope and react and keep it away from me. And I was micromanaging it. But when I wake up, and it was always around 3:30 at night, I noticed it because I checked my watch. 3:30 at night, almost every single night, for a few weeks on end, and it had hit me worse than ever because it was like, because I wasn't battling it and dealing with it in the way that I was dealing with it on a day-to-day basis, it had just, boom, like hit me treble. It's like, well, you haven't been thinking for an hour, you managed to sleep, right? So when we had 500 problems for you earlier, we've now got 1,500, and you're going to have to deal with them now, or it's all going to end, or it's all going to be over. And it was like anxiety was waiting for me. And I experienced this not only through sleep, so Low Blows on the flagship, it was another kind of welcome distraction for me. And the ironic thing is that we did shows weekly around this time, which people might remember. Remember all the rap battles and stuff like that we did? And the ironic thing was that was the period that I felt that the kind of me, Katie, and Keen dynamic really clicked for whatever reason. It's just, it worked then, because, I was still anxious, but at the same time, when I was recording the show, I got to be Rick instead of Jer, which is my shoot name and shoot personality. And I'm speaking to you as Jer today, not Rick. But when the mic goes on And I'm doing the show. I get to be Rick, and I get to be like talking about wrestling and doing all that. And that got to like that allowed me to, and I have to engage fully, or the show's going to be shit. So that allowed me to be Rick for a couple hours and forget about the problems Jer was having. And yeah, like you may have even seen me around this time. Like we had the likes of the Wrestle Kingdom party and the Royal Rumble, and again, like there, I probably seemed fine, and I was genuinely fine and happy during these periods. But it was like I'd get to the end of it, so I'd finish the show, and I'd go away, and I'd be like, oh, that felt really good. I actually feel really happy. And I'd walk around the corner. It's literally like a 2-minute walk around the corner from Buskers, where we record, to my bus stop. And then as soon as I get to my bus stop, it was like with the nighttime anxiety, and it's like, boom. Oh, we've been waiting for you. We have been waiting with all of these problems, and you're going to need to deal with them. And don't you feel sad about that? How shit does that feel? Oh, low blows. That went great, but you're never going to get to do that again. And it'll just go on and on and on. And when you're living this way, I learned that it didn't take me long until I bottomed out and broke. Less than a month in, this is the tough part. I'm just going to have a drink. So, I've never spoke about this publicly, but it's important to get across. Less than a month in to dealing with all this. So, like, it can be, if we say December 1st, everything's fine. December 21st, this is. I don't know the exact date, but around then. I woke up one night and the nighttime anxiety hit me. And I just wanted to sleep. I was just tired. I was tired of waking up at 3:30 every single night. And maybe not getting back to sleep at all. Maybe not getting back to sleep till 5:30 or 6:30, and then my alarm for work going off at 7. I was just tired. And when you're at that state of exhaustion, when you're living off like 1-2 hours sleep, you'll think anything, or you'll try anything, or you'll do anything like it's torture. It is actual torture. Lack of sleep is genuinely a form of torture. You will think whatever you need to think if it feels better. So on this particular night, I went with, what if you killed yourself? What if you just ended it? You would be free of all of this. And right now, you don't know how to get rid of this. You've no idea. It doesn't seem like things are getting better. This is it. This is your life now. This is what living is. You can just end it. You can just go and be gone. And because surely nothing will be better than this. You don't want to be awake right now. You just want to sleep. You can sleep forever. And for me, it wasn't real. It was hypothetical. It was just, we're just exploring options here. We're just throwing everything out there. But the scary part is that it suited me. It made me feel better. Like, just in the moment, there was instant relief just thinking about, imagine I didn't have to deal with this. So I went with it. And I kept going with the thoughts, and I made a plan. I figured out how I was going to do it. Again, just hypothetically, not saying I'm going to, but if you did, how would you do it? I started thinking about people that I'd leave behind. I thought about like low blows. I'm like, well, that's going anyway. So at least this way you don't have to be here for the downfall. I thought about my family. I thought about my friends. I thought about how they'd feel if I did this. I thought, do you know what? They know I'm going through a tough time right now. I think I could write letters to them individually, the closest people that matter, and I could just explain, this isn't about you. I just wanted to sleep. And life was just tough. And it's not that this was the right solution, it's just I pussied out. And I didn't have it in me for the fight. And I planned out all the letters to the point I wrote them all in my head. And then I started to want it. It was all hypothetical. And then I was like, yeah, this is the way forward. This is it. Because I was instantly much more relaxed. I was like, oh, you can just not have any of this. This is it. You figured it out. This is the solution. And then I thought of, to get really deep and dark, I thought of who would find my body and what that would do to them. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm not doing that. And that was that. And I want to be clear, because I know suicide has affected all of us in some way. So I want to be very clear on this, because it may help people understand who may not have gotten closure. It may just give some different perspective, which may offer some small sense of understanding or comfort. I want to be clear on this, in that I didn't want to die. That is not what I wanted. When I say I wanted it, I wanted to feel the way that I felt, the relaxed calmness and the absence of worry and dread and fear and anxiousness and the constant clenched chest and the inability to sleep. I was relaxed and I wanted that, and this seemed like the only way I could get that. I did not want to die. I wanted to live. I wanted the life that I had planned. I wanted that life. I wanted any life. I wanted any life that offered me happiness. I would have taken it. I just didn't see any possible way forward. And I was thinking about this for 24 hours a day. So if I couldn't think of it within 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how could there be any other way forward? Obviously, I'm sitting here talking to you right now, so obviously there was, but I couldn't see it at this time. So it's not that I wanted to die. That was the last thing that I wanted to happen. I love my family and friends. I love them as much as possible. I didn't want to make them sad for a second. I just thought I could figure out a way where I could get what I want and relax, and where they could get what they want and some kind of peace with it. I could make them okay with it. I could make them, it would always be difficult to live with, but I could do it in a way where they would survive and be able to go back and live happy lives eventually, and at least understand why I did it, if not be happy with it or accepting of it. But my ideal was to live happily with them. It just didn't seem possible. And the daily pain was unbearable. It was tortured. It was genuinely like in a movie when you see someone being tortured so severely that they beg for the mercy of a quick death. It wasn't that I wanted to die. It was that I wanted to stop being tortured. It was that I wanted the pain that I was in constantly to just be gone. That's all I wanted. And I understood then why people did it. I understood it. I understood that it wasn't selfish. It was self-preservation, if anything. I know that's such a weird phrase and seems contradictory to use, but it feels that way. It feels like you're under attack constantly, and that doing this one thing, while it's so permanent, is self-preservation. It's obviously not. It's the complete opposite of self-preservation. But your mind is so fucking warped when you're feeling this way. I'm not sleeping. It's half 3 at night. I've got maybe an hour's sleep. I got an hour's sleep last night. this is where my brain is at. This is where it's dangerous. And here's the scary part as well. Like I said, it worked. It suited me. I didn't feel sad until I thought about who'd find my body. But if I could have found a way to tick all the boxes, I'm not sure that I would have talked my way out of it. I'm not sure I would have had the strength to talk my way out of it if I could have ticked all the boxes. And maybe I'm not here recording this, but I am. And the thing is, I'm so fucking glad for that right now. So fucking glad. At that time, it felt like the world had ended, like there was nothing to live for, like there was no way out. I felt it. I lived it. I embraced the idea of not having to go through the day-to-day existence anymore. At that time, there was no end in sight. But I stand here right now, just a few quick short months later, and say I'm so fucking glad that I didn't do that. And that's all I can say. If you ever go through this, if you ever experience it yourself, I've lived the fact that there is life beyond it. There is. But often people don't know. And that's why I want to do this show, because I had to figure out a way to get from there to here, like so many others have before me. And I don't know, I just don't always hear podcasts that talk about mental health difficulties, talk about the step-by-step. And that's what I want to do here. So, with that low, let's get to the Rocky montage. Let's do the comeback. I'm ruined it. If you just thought of the song in your head, it would have been better than me singing it. Like, all of the momentum that I could have built up by mentioning the Rocky montage, and I had to go fucking sing it and just ruin it and butcher it. Let's get to how I got from there to here. So Christmas and New Year, I put the head down. I just tunnel visioned it through. I'm like, it's a week. It's 1 week. You're going to sleep maybe for 1 hour a night. We even say you're not going to sleep. Like, figure that as your worst case scenario. And if you do get to sleep, then that's a blessing. But just get through it. Get through the week. And then it's a new year. And the reason was because I'm like, right, counseling. Now it's time. Now it's time. Now when you had those crazy thoughts, it's time. You need to talk to someone about this. But the problem was, it was Christmas. Nowhere was open. Everyone was off enjoying their Christmas. So I was just like, just get through it. 2nd of January, it will arrive. Just as sure as day follows night. Just get to the 2nd of January. Then make the call. And when I said counseling there, don't worry, I don't blame you if you kind of got a bit shocked and thought, oh, Jesus, he must have been really bad. But for me, I don't necessarily feel that way. In my opinion, everyone needs counselling in some form. It may not be going to a counsellor once a week or whatever. It may just be counselling by talking to their friends or whatnot. But show me a man who says that he's got healthy coping mechanisms for every single bad scenario life can throw at him, like the sudden death of a close loved one, a job loss, financial instability, a horrible breakup, whatever. And I'll show you either a liar or a sociopath. The reality is, the human condition is not built for dealing with certain levels of trauma. And, like in my case, for example, trauma on top of trauma. You know what I mean? Like a bunch of different things happening at the same time in an unlikely but very real, unfortunate series of events. What we all do is we deal the best we can. But we have zero control over a lot of what life can throw at us. And when it does, and life, it will throw curveballs at us. in doing so, though, in trying to deal with it the best we can pick up bad habits, and we pick up coping mechanisms that may feel better in the moment but may not be better, such as me lying in bed thinking that the best way of self-preservation was ending my own life. These are the kind of bad habits we can pick up without checking our worst impulses by talking to someone and dealing with it. Like me even telling others about my anxiety, like that kind of stuff, where it's like, yeah, it makes me feel better in the moment, but actually I'm unloading all of my problems onto my friends, and I'm making them maybe want to be my friends less as a result. We all need help to be able to process and deal with these things, or we're just taking time bombs waiting to go off. We're just people who are waiting to piss our lives away down the pub, or we're just like, gonna just start yelling at our family and having shitty home lives and becoming shitty people, or having affairs on our partners and stuff like that, and reacting in completely random ways. Here's what I think when I look at counselling. And I'm lucky in that I have experience with it. Like when I was in school, I was a little dickhead. I was a total messer. I didn't try and be a dickhead, but the end result was that I was a total attention seeker and messer, and I nearly got expelled once, but at the last minute they offered me counselling. So I'd gone through it, and it actually helped. It actually, even though I had to go as a last resort and didn't necessarily choose to or want to, the difference it made was night and day. It made me from like a fucking Egypt kid into a mature adult, who was actually ready to accept responsibilities and whatnot. So I'd felt the benefit of it before, even if I didn't necessarily choose to go. So I was happy to go. I had no kind of qualms about it. But the problem is, and the way I look at it is that we're going to deal with this stuff whether we like it or not. We aren't in control of it as much as we like to think we are. The difference with talking about it, and the difference with going to the likes of counselling, or just having good friends that we can deal with these things, and that their advice tends to lead us on the right path, or they can just hear us out and let us work through our issues ourselves. The difference with not talking about it and talking about it is that talking about it, you can control it somewhat. You can get on top of it. You can understand why it's happening, and you can actually deal with the issues at their core rather than just leaving it to chance by not talking about it. That's where you get people being alcoholics. That's where you get people being dickheads to their family and friends. That's where you get them lashing out at work. That's where you get people with anger problems. That's where you get people suffering with depression and anxiety because they're not coping with these things okay. Counselling gives you a measure of control over that, talking about it. And that's where I came from, and that's why I had no problem doing it. It was just Christmas, so nowhere was open. So when I was going to the doctors to deal with that chest infection that I spoke about earlier, I mentioned my anxiety while I was there. Now the reality was, I'm not going to lie, it's weird. He's like a quiet, meek Indian man who like wasn't necessarily ready for me to talk about it. Like, I just needed to talk to someone, and I needed just to be pointed in the right direction. And I'm like, he's a doctor, he's as good as anyone. But it's weird when he's like, okay, well, what is wrong? What can I do? And he's giving you that look where he's like, I don't know what to say to you. So he was fairly useless. But fortunately, in the office, I was able to pick up on my way. I was able to pick up some pamphlets. And I picked up one for the IACP. That's the Irish Association for Counsellors and Psychotherapy. And this is the important part. This is the step-by-step, because people think of counselling and they think it's so expensive. It's probably like 200-300 quid a week to go get a therapist, and I don't have that to spend. So that's not me. I can't do that. That's for other people. That's for rich people. And I was like, right, I need this. So whatever resources I have, I'm going to put towards this. And I was pleasantly surprised when I actually looked into it. Because yes, counselling can be expensive if you just look up counsellor in Google and call up the first name that comes up. And it turns out they're high on Google because they're really highly qualified. And they're like been doing it for 50 years. But at the same time, there are cheaper options out there, and you can find them, and and not only cheaper as well, because you hear that and you're like, I don't know if I necessarily want to fix all my problems by going the Aldi route. That's not what this is. They are cheap, but they are effective, and they are highly qualified. I consider myself absolutely blessed to have discovered the person I discovered this way. I went on to IACP.ie. That's IACP.ie. And on that website, you type in your location, and it gives you a list of people who offer the services in your area. It gives you their email, it gives you their phone number, and it gives you their rates as well for a lot of them. And what I found out was that the average rate in my area was like 50 quid for an hour. And an hour a week was what I was looking for. And that's pretty much what you need, because like it's heavy going, and you need the week then to process what you've discussed and deal with it. So an hour a week is all you need. 50 quid a pop. For the sake of, sanity and happiness, that's not bad for me. I know different people have different situations financially and whatnot, and that 50 quid, it's a lot to me. Like, it's not nothing, but like, while I can afford it, maybe other people can't. But for me, whereas I would have said a year ago, well, look, I don't have 50 quid in the bank account at the end. It turned out that when I changed a few things around, when I started bringing my lunch into work instead of buying it in Burger King and stupid places, I had 50 quid kind of easily. It was like, okay, I just made a few changes, and turns out it is there, even if I thought it wasn't. And 50 quid isn't actually that much. So I gave a few people a call, ended up talking to one person. She was really empathetic and understanding when explaining my situation. I got booked in for the following Monday, and I found a place. It's called the Blanchardstown Therapy Centre. It's in Blanchardstown Village, for anyone who's around there. And it's literally just around the corner. It's less than a 10-minute walk from my house. So the location could not have been better. The person seemed really trustworthy and nice and decent over the phone, but also seemed to have their shit together. So I'm like, okay, there you go. It was just a few phone calls to different people, and I found someone who had the exact free time that I needed, because Monday suited me, and there we go. It's happening. We're sorted. All of this time, while still feeling quite victimised, and like I got a rough hand dealt to me with life, which I did, to be fair, but all this time I prayed for some kind of good karma. Like, I entered the Euro Millions with a vengeance. I'm like, I deserve this. You know what I mean? I mightn't get to do my dream job and might have to re-qualify as a lot of other people have to do. So therefore, I deserve 175 million euros. I'm not saying it was the right train of thought, but I did feel that I was due some good karma. Where it actually came, it said 175 mil, which to be fair I would have taken, but I'm happy with this anyway. It came in finding a good counsellor in Joanna, who works in the Blanchardstown Therapy Centre. So, and here's the thing as well, like, it's kind of a counsellor-patient relationship. It's kind of like going on Tinder dates. It's kind of like even a friendship or a romantic relationship where, the first person mightn't necessarily be the best person for you. It can be a case of trial and error, and it might take a while for you to find someone that you click with. So a lot of times people will try counselling and they won't click with the first person they meet, so they automatically assume, oh, it's not for me. Oh, I don't like that. Maybe it's not the counsellor that's the issue. Maybe it's you got the wrong counsellor. They just didn't work for you and you have to try it. The bit of luck I got here was that the person that I ended up going with was like, I credit her with like, see, a large part in saving my life, because you saw how low I was getting, and if I'd have had a few more nights like that, who knows, maybe I would have found acceptable answers. But with Joanna's help, I'm still here and I'm doing damn well within 6 months. So I got so lucky. Like Joanna, for example, she'll call me on my shit, which I like. This is the thing, like, some people may not like this, but she'll, like, for me, she knows my personality and she's able to read me quite well, so she knows that this is stuff I'll connect with. Like, she'll call me on my shit and it really works. Like, for example, one time I nearly broke down crying. And this is the thing, like, I'm not a big crier. I'll cry when I'm like watching TV shows and movies. I'm like Chandler and Friends, where that's where I let my emotion out. You know, and I didn't for years, but then I kind of a dam broke like Chandler, and now just like anything slight bit emotional will just be like. But in real life, in real serious issues, like, it takes a lot to make me cry. Like, even at a death, or even while going through all of this phase, I hardly ever cried, like, through all of this, like, difficult time that I'm talking about. It's just not something that comes naturally. So it was a big deal when something nearly broke me when we're getting to it in a session, and I wasn't expecting it. And Joanna turns around nicely and kindly and understandingly and she said, look, you can cry here if you need to. That's okay. It's part of the experience. I turned around straight away without missing a beat, and I'm like, no, I'm on the clock here. I'm paying for me time. I'll cry when I get home, and it's free. And we laughed at that, and then she turns around, like, kind of lets the moment breathe for a bit. Then, without missing a beat herself, she goes, so how long have you been using humour as a defence mechanism? And I'm like, oh shit, she's good. I'm like, oh shit, she didn't let me away with nothing there. And that stuff really works for me. That's what I like. But again, different people are different and different have to. I'm not even saying that's Joanna's style, just she was able to read that she got to know my personality enough to know that that'd work with me and whatnot. So, but yeah, you can take trial and error. I just got lucky in this case. So here's the thing as well. When it comes to counselling, what most people will think is that counselling is going to be, they're going to go somewhere and they're feeling quite vulnerable and they're feeling quite defensive, and they might feel like I feel, like a victim. Like, I've done nothing wrong here and I feel like shit. So they might feel defensive as well, and like they may feel like they're going to go to counselling and they're going to get someone saying, you're wrong for everything, you're wrong about everything, and you need to change everything about themselves. Maybe because partly they feel that way themselves, even if they don't want to come up with it, because on one hand, they feel really low and they're questioning everything about themselves, but on the other, they're like, I did nothing wrong. So they may feel defensive, and and it may put them off by thinking that counselling is going to be someone saying you're wrong and everything about you is wrong and you need to change everything. It's not like that. It's not like that. Nobody is going to tell you you're wrong about everything in your life and you're a horrible person in counselling. That's not what it's about. We live in total fear of not touching on certain issues, and we will accept insane circumstances. Like the circumstances I described that I was going through, not sleeping, pacing around the room for hours at a time. Like things which aren't acceptable ways to live your life. We will accept those circumstances rather than go near the issues because we want to avoid being told that maybe we're wrong. People will drink themselves to near death or death. At the weekends, they'll cheat on every partner they're with. They'll be a shitty parent or a shitty friend. They'll spend all day on Twitter giving out about how fucked up the entire world is, all just to avoid talking about the thing they don't want to talk about, because they think that if they go to counselling or if they talk about it, they may get challenged or they may get attacked or they may get told they're horrible or they're wrong. That's not what counselling is. What it is a person giving you empathy and understanding your position, coming at it from an unbiased position, someone who isn't involved in your life and isn't affected by your thing. So it's quite tough to talk to say, you know, if you have issues from your childhood, it can be quite tough to talk to your parents because they may have done their best but got some stuff wrong, and they may feel like you're challenging them or you're questioning them a bit unfairly. Whereas with a counsellor, you're getting someone who's totally unaffected and who's just on your side and looking to help you figure out the answers for yourself. Also, as well, what you'll get there is you'll get someone who's not going to push you further than you're willing to go. That was something that I got really early through chatting with Joanna. Like, she's like, and she'll say it straight out. She's like, you can only go so far and you can only cope with so much every week. So we're not going to get into the big issues until you're ready to get into them. And then we'll go there if you want. But not until you're ready. So they're not going to push you further than you need to go. They're not going to totally just come in and straight away be challenging you. And if you're feeling that kind of hostile defensiveness and stuff like that, then that's probably a sign that you need to try someone else. Not that counselling doesn't work, because let me tell you, from life experience, it does. And here's the reality of it all as well. As someone who's gone through every aspect of my life since childhood with a fine-tooth comb and re-examined everything I thought was normal, because that was the pain I was in. I was like, look, I don't care. Just get this out of me. I will do anything. I'll talk about anything. I'll do whatever if you think it'll help. Because I built trust with Joanna quite early. If I didn't have that trust, I may not be as giving there. But I wanted this bad feeling out of me. And then when you actually do go through the stuff you're looking to maybe not talk about or avoid, or you don't want to confront or deal with, when you go through it and you're actually ready to go through it, it's actually grand. Like, I've had to confront stuff like, I don't know, my relationship with my parents, or bad relationships I've been in the past, or like, you know, things that I don't like about myself, things that I do like about myself. I find that tough to talk about sometimes. And like just bad kind of habits I've gotten into, bad trains of thought. I've had to touch on it all. And guess what? I survived, and I'm happy. And it only made me understand why I do things a certain way. And, like, if anything, how a lot of it wasn't my fault. Whereas I might have gone in and feared that I was going to get told everything was my fault. It's like, no, that wasn't your fault. This was because of this and this and this. And that's the way. But now you've got to do it this and this way, because you understand that. And understanding that there's new ways of dealing with things. There's not just the one way. And sometimes the way that you deal with things can make those things 100 times worse. Whereas if you just try a different way and get an unbiased opinion from someone qualified, then you're laughing. Do you know what it's like, actually? It's like, do you know when you fancy someone? When you're in, like, school or whatever, or even up to this day or whatever. I don't know what age you are. But you know when you fancy someone, and you're afraid of saying it, and you're nervous, and you're like, oh, I don't want to get rejected. Oh, I don't want to get rejected. Oh, I don't want to get rejected. Do you ever notice that for people who actually do go up and have done it, I'm sure we've all bit the bullet at least once in our lives, but when you actually go up and ask someone out and you say, right, I like it. I do like it. What's the story? And a lot of us will have been in the situation where that conversation hasn't gone the way we liked. And we haven't got what we wanted. Do you notice the weird thing? And maybe it's just me, but I think this is kind of common. You're actually alright. Like, for me, now I don't give a fuck. I'm in my 30s. Like, I have no problem going up to someone and saying, I like it. Yeah, do you want to do something about that? Or not? You know, whatever. But when I used to have that fear, whenever I'd actually do it, even if it wasn't the result I wanted, I was like, well, I couldn't control that. Whatever, I did my best. I'm actually kind of proud of myself. Fair play. And the thing was, the anticipation of it all was way worse than the actual act itself. And doing it and being turned down, it's actually fine. And that's a similar way with counselling, where it's like, you're afraid of it, but then when you actually talk about it, you spend your whole life avoiding it and building it up, but the anticipation is actually worse. When it's like, oh yeah, here's the thing I don't want to talk about, let's get to it. You're in there with someone who cares. You're in there with someone trained to deal with it. You're in there with someone who's unbiased and isn't going to go on the attack for no reason. And it's going to be fine. And you won't go there until you're ready. And a good counsellor won't force you to either. So trust me on that. It's actually okay. I just submitted myself to it all. Like I said, the pain was unbearable and I wanted it gone. So any suggestion she made, any kind of question she asked, I gave the honest, unvarnished truth and took everything she said on board, no matter how unnatural or ridiculous it felt at the time, or it would have seemed to me beforehand. And one thing I realized about myself was that I was happy being a victim. I would blame others for the circumstances in my life to make myself feel better, which I think a lot of us have done in the past, and it is very easy to do. And while a lot of what I'm saying or feeling might be valid, ultimately it got me nowhere. It was only in accepting my own responsibility for the circumstances in my own life that I could dig myself out of a hole. Even in, like, situations, like, I've been fucked over in the past, and I've been treated unfairly by people and whatnot. But I had to then take a step back and say, all right, that's not my fault. I didn't deserve that. But at the same time, I put myself in that situation. Here were warning signs that I could have avoided. And now I know. I can't change the past, but now I can change the future, and I can learn from it, and I can benefit only by taking responsibility, only by saying, what could I have done differently that would have led to a different end result? Whereas if you blame everyone else and you say the world is fucked, and that's how I know, by the way, someone is going through some, like, suffering from depression of some sort. If they're ever, like, on Twitter, for example, you could see it quite clearly on Twitter. If someone's like, the world is fucked, man, the world is fucked, everything's fucked, and it's like, I'm perfect, but everyone else is wrong. That's like a sign of depression, and that's a sign of victimization, and that's where you're going down a negative, toxic path. And what results in half the Twitter arguments, probably 75%, 80% of the Twitter arguments we see there are just fucking stupid. It's that absence of responsibility for putting yourself in that situation. And taking that responsibility is the only way you can dig yourself out of it. You don't have to say you're wrong or you're to blame for everything that's happened to you. Sometimes people do just fuck you over. But you are responsible for how you get out of it and how you deal with it. We are all responsible for ourselves. And even if someone fucks us over, it doesn't give us the right to, you know, blame them and be a victim and just sit there and feel sorry for ourselves. We have to own up to the fact that it is us who has to get us out of these situations. And sometimes all that can take is just going to counsel and letting a counsellor guide you through it, because there's help out there, and you don't have to do it all by yourself, but you do have to be the one who leads it, and you do have to do it by taking responsibility. In terms of things that felt unnatural to try, this is what led me to meditation, which is another thing I want to talk about. Because I started one session where I was particularly tense and aggro, and just everything Joanna was saying, I was just being like, no, it's not that. Like, not kind of angry. Like, I'm not an aggressive person. Like, I worked in security and I can put it on pretty good, but like, my true self is not like that at all. If anything, I'm laid back, and I lean towards joking or humor as a kind of default backbone coping mechanism than anger. But I was just kind of tense, and I'm just like, no, it's not that. And she just was like, okay, how are you feeling inside? And I'm like, I'm tense. And so what she did was she guided me through some mindfulness meditation, and it seems crazy, and I'm not going to go into it all at first, because if I went into it, you'd say no, like I would have said no. I'm going to tell you about the effect it had on me. Because, like I said, I just felt so shitty that I was willing to try anything. And I would have never, ever, in a million years, called myself a meditating type of person. But as soon as she talked me through some stuff, and she just kind of guided me towards, like, focusing on my breath and whatnot. And as soon as I did that, it was gone. It just evaporated. I was fine. And for the first time in weeks, I was just calm. And I was like, that's what I was looking for. I was gonna kill myself. But this is what I was looking for. This is the peace. This is just the bit of fucking space in my brain that I can actually just, like, breathe and just go, and just fucking think for a second and relax. And I was like, okay, meditating works. And a friend then tipped me off about Headspace. It's an app. So I tried it out. Just the free stuff at first. So, sure enough, I went along with the free stuff. I went into the basics course. And when you download the app, it talks you through it. And sure enough, every time, it'd clear my head in the exact same way. When I'd have something big on or something that I wanted to have a clear head for. And I started to feel myself for the first time in a couple of months. I started to come back. I started to remember what it had felt like beforehand when I wasn't just consumed by anxiety. I started to be able to take the wheel in my own brain yet again, even if it was just for a few hours. And the great thing about this is, it's not all like lighting candles and sitting cross-legged in a dark room saying, oh, while praying to a Buddha statue. I've never done that. I've never done any of that. I've never lit candles. I've never sat cross-legged. I've never gone home. And I've no statues of Buddha in my house. That's not what it is. It's sitting on your couch for a few minutes trying to focus on your breathing instead of focusing on everything else that's stressing you out. And teaching your brain how to calm the fuck down for a few minutes so you can think straight and focus on and enjoy what's ahead of you for the day. And then on top of that, what you learn, and both counselling and Headspace kind of mashed together for this for me, because Headspace will get me through the day to day and give some suggestions, and then I go talk about things and understand them with Joanna then every Monday. So both of them would work together. But what it is as well is it gives you coping mechanisms to deal with things. So, I'd learn things as I go along and do certain courses. I did a course on anger, and I did a course on anxiety, and I did a course on... I've done all the courses, basically, that are in the stress and anxiety thing, because that's that's my jam. That's the area I'm looking to kind of zone in on, and I've learned so many things that I've been able to put to practice during it. And Joanna would get on me and she'd be like, am I doing it daily? Am I grounding myself daily? Because that's a great way of actually dealing with things. And I'd be like, I don't have 15 minutes a day to do that. And she's like, you do. You have 15 minutes. You definitely have 15 minutes where you do it. And it turns out I had 15 minutes. It's not a lot of time. And for what it did for me, for how it was able to start my day and just instantly, I was able, so what I do is before I go to work or when I get up on days I was off, I just start my day, I ground myself, I do 15 minutes meditation, and then I was myself for the day. And then while I started to pick up coping mechanisms for dealing with things, stuff that I'd never had before but that are really easy, I'll get to one or two of them as we go on. I'd realise I'd be able to fight off the anxiety, and then I was able to think straight, and then slowly but surely I was able to rebuild my life. And then things that had been going around in circles for my head, all of a sudden, instead of the same problems going around in circles, solutions started popping up. And then I was actually okay. I was able to function happily. And that was when I started to properly come back. That was when I started to be myself again. That was when I was like, this is going to end. This is going to be over. I'm not out of the woods yet. I'm not there yet. But this is the start. And this is where I'm learning the skills. And now it's just repeating it and going back over it. And sure enough, I did for months on end. I tweeted out there the other day, that since the start of 2019, I have spent over 24 hours. That's a full day of my life, by the way. Over 24 hours meditating in 2019. And it has changed my life. Between that and Joanna and counselling, it has changed my life. Because it's just like a double whammy. Like I said, I ground myself in the morning. I have my coping mechanisms during the day to deal with anything that may come up. And then for any big things, I can just kind of park it if something big comes up, and I can just say, I'm going to go talk to Joanna about that. And we'll get to the bottom of that, but that's for then. Now you can just focus on the present, and you can focus on being happy and figuring out everything in the meantime. So I'm able to fight it for the first time in my life, and I'm not dumping it on someone else. I'm not dumping it on my family. I'm not dumping it on my friends. I'm not lashing out at anyone. I'm not medicating through alcohol. I'm not doing anything else. I'm just able to solve any issues that come up as they come up. I'm able to just whack-a-mole. It pops up. I'm able to knock it back down easily and as simply as that. And it's not about just avoiding the anxiety. It's about learning to get comfortable with the anxiety and being so what happens is it's I've got a little OS menu, and as soon as I get anxiety throughout the day, because the thing you learn with it is you're always going to get anxiety. It's a human emotion. It's like happiness. It's like sadness. It's like hunger. It's like thirst. It's never going away. You're not going to ever be able to teach yourself not to be anxious, but you can teach yourself to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. So stuff comes up which just gets me a bit oh, I'm worrying about that. So when it happens, I've managed to, because I've just been repeating these cycles day in, day out, non-stop, and getting that kind of muscle memory with it now, what happens when I get a bit of anxiety is like a little menu comes up in my brain. And the way Headspace describes it is like, you know, it's like watching traffic. Like your anxiety is traffic, but you're standing at the side of the road and you're able to just watch it go by, and you're just able to let it go by, but you're still standing still and you haven't been moved or affected by this. You're just watching it happen. That's what I say. I think of it like a little menu in my brain where it's like a little other voice that's like, hey there, bud. Looks like you've got a bit of anxiety here. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to put that to the side. You can come back to it later if you want to think about it when you're calm. You can come back to it if you even want to. And most times, if I'm being honest, I don't. I can just leave it and just forget about it. They're like, you can worry about that and think about all the things that you need to worry about later when you're not freaking out. Instead, what I want you to do is just take a couple of deep breaths. And what you do is you breathe in. And this, Joanna puts it a great way. She's like, you breathe in kind of like clean air. And you breathe out the thing that's worrying you. And you just take deep breaths and you just breathe it out. Do that a few times. And then what you do is you just breathe normally. You just focus. You just think about like where in your body you're breathing. And just count the breaths. That's what I do. This works for me. And there's other ways of doing it that you can figure out yourself. But this is what works for me. So I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. Count up to 10. And then I count at 10, I start back at 1 again. Reason you start back at 1 is it's not a competition. You're not making it about how high can I count or anything like that. Anything that can worry about you. It's just you're just focusing on something else. You're going, right, I've taken note of the fact that I have anxiety. I will get back to that if I need to, but I don't need to think about it now because freaking out about it won't help. And that's literally changed my life. That small bit of skill and routine and ability, and it sounds very simple, and look, if you try that and it works for you, that's great. You don't need to do the counseling or anything like that. But for me, what I find unfortunately is that while that's a decent coping mechanism, learning about my anxiety and where it came from and understanding that and understanding all of the issues and how they build up and learning to kind of listen to my body and understand, like learning to catch when I get anxiety. That alone is a trick. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's like we don't necessarily realize it because it just happens. It's just on us. It's just like, I need to think about this now. I need to think about this. Oh my God, I need to worry about this and blah, 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 blah. And you teach yourself to go, hold on, take a second. That's anxiety. Chill the fuck out. Calm down. And you just manage it from a kind of happy place and then send yourself back to that happy place. It's unbelievable, and it may sound like garbage, but try it and see if your life doesn't change if you suffer like I have. And within a couple minutes, I can be on the bus, I can be walking through a busy Dublin city centre, I can be in a fucking pub or nightclub, but I can do that without anyone noticing, without anyone even looking at me. It happened at a Fight Factory show a few weeks ago. I started to get like anxiety about there was problems with the sound. And I just started, like, I had people right beside me. I had the like circadian Phil like right beside me. And I just started breathing on the quiet. And then it's like, right, I'm grand. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get out of this problem? Let's deal with this from a calm standpoint rather than like running around screaming at people and shouting and panicking, which does not help the situation one bit. And within a couple of minutes, back to what I'm doing, and I'm grand. If it's a big issue, like I said, I want to examine further, make a note of it on my phone, and then talk to Joanna the next time I see her, and she'll help me put it right. And then I can just stop worrying about it because I'm dealing with it through counselling. And that's it. These things are just a part of my life now as well. That's the thing that I kind of want to get across from that's worked for me. It's like a diet or deciding to go to the gym. It doesn't work if you just do it for a few weeks. It works if you just change it and make it and incorporate it into your lifestyle. And now I see Joanna every second week. I saw her every week for the first 10, 12 weeks, and then I changed it up to every second week just for like, you know, it's a lot of money still. So just for pure financial reasons, and also as well the immediate issues had been dealt with. But I will see her every second week for the foreseeable future. That's just a part of my life. My 15 minutes of meditating in the morning with Headspace, that's just a thing that I do every day now. And that's going to be the way things are for the foreseeable future. On the other side of that, not only am I back to myself and happy, but I'm not afraid of things going wrong again, which they will. Like, the benefit to Headspace and the benefit to meditating and being able to ground yourself, and it's weird because you don't necessarily see it. It's not as if you're feeling like, sometimes, now don't get me wrong, I can feel the kind of elated, kind of, tingly feeling you say people that have done meditation say they feel. I felt that before, but that's not what it's like every day. Mostly it's just quietening down my brain and being able to think straight, which for a lot of people, they may take that for granted because we don't tend to question, like, say, for example, say we're happy. We don't tend to question when we feel happy. We don't sit there going, I'm so happy right now. We just go with it and we just assume that it's always going to be this way, and we don't notice how happy we are until we're sad and we're like, oh, but I was so happy yesterday. You know what I mean? It's like my back went out a couple of weeks ago, and like I'd been walking around completely healthy and not inhibited in any way, but only through not being able to walk around like a normal person until my back got injured. Or when my back got injured, was I able to appreciate being able to walk around like a normal person. And within a couple of weeks, I'll forget how much of an inconvenience it was to not be able to do all that stuff when my back was injured. But that's the thing. We take these things for granted. But when you've been through the other side of it and you've gone to that extreme level, and maybe some people like me need to hit rock bottom before they understand and appreciate how important this stuff is. Hopefully that's not the case with you, because I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. But when you've been to the other side, then you appreciate just a little thing like being able to just start your day off with a clean slate, with no worries, no anxieties. Some people will hear that and be like, yeah, that's every day for me. Some others will be like, that's amazing, teach me everything. And that's the benefit to it. And it just lets you be normal and deal with things as they come up, rather than have things overwhelm you and destroy everything in your life. Have you cancel plans? Have you have arguments with people? Have you get snappy and rude, or just cut yourself off for the world, or just feel totally overwhelmed and not be able to breathe, or not be able to look at your phone or anything like that? Like, it's the difference between just being able to function. And anyone with anxiety knows that that's a gift at times. That just the ability to be normal is a gift. And that's what I've got from this. And like I said, I'm not afraid now of things going wrong again. I don't want it to happen, obviously. But there's a part of me that is interested if and when it does, because stuff will go wrong, in kind of rising to the challenge and testing my new skills. Even when my back went out. You know what I mean? Old me would have freaked out and been depressed and been like, I'm off work and it's such a waste and I'm not able to do all of the plans that I did. And instead I was just like, I was able to like calm my shit because of the skills that I picked up and be like, all right, well, look, I'm off work for 2 weeks. So at least I don't have to miss any work and I don't have to lose any money. So I'm going to be smart about this. I'm going to make sure that I'm intelligent. I'm going to get back on my feet in time for when I'm starting my new job. And then I'm going to, and I was still able to do all the plans that I planned anyway. I went to see Toy Story that night because I'm like, instead of freaking out, instead of feeling sorry for myself, instead of feeling like a victim and just cutting myself off the world, try think of ways you can do what you want to do, and try think of ways you can save yourself and make sure that you're healthy enough to still do the things you don't want to do. And I was just able to approach it all from a positive mindset that just helped me out and allowed me to continue living my life despite bad things happening. And that's where I'm at these days, because I've developed these new skills to be able to kind of heal myself and not rely on anything or not get bogged down or overwhelmed by the anxiety. The important thing here as well, though, is I want to live. I want to live a life. And even if bad things come with that, I'm happy to accept that. Because now I realize that in living comes the risk of failure. But I don't fear that anymore. I don't fear the what if it all goes wrong. I embrace it now. I'm like, okay, yeah, this could go wrong, but you know what? It's worth doing anyway, because at the end of it, you're going to be fine. You've dealt with this. You've dealt with the worst case scenario. You're going to be fine. Let's try again. Let's fail again if that's how it goes. Let's learn the lessons, and let's come back even stronger. As for how everything worked out, well, obviously, low blows survived. I realised when I was able to clear my brain that I could just scale back my day-to-day to the point that nobody on the outside would even notice, and now enjoy it more than I had when things were super busy and intense. Well, now it can survive. The way I have it now, it can survive and thrive for as long as possible. It helped a lot, not going to lie, that this year has been our biggest and busiest year for a few years too. So thanks to Becky Lynch and a retweet for that. When I was worrying about my career, for example, many of you will have seen, if you follow me on social media, that I left my old job at 12 years and I'm starting a new career now. And that's how things have gone for the most part. When I sat back and blamed others for my troubles, instead I realized, like, I didn't get anywhere. I didn't like, blaming others just left me in the same shitty position that I'd always been in. But then when I realized that the actions of others that upset me just made me feel about things in my life that I was responsible for, therefore I had the power to change, I did. I changed it. Once I kind of realized, it's like that Neo in the Matrix. The gun's in my hand. I control this. This is my life. I don't have to sit back and feel bad that you're pointing a gun at me. I just need to realize I've got the gun in my hand because I control it. So that's where I'm at. Things are better now. I'm happy. And I realize there's another way. And now I'm like, if bad stuff happens, I'll be fine then too, because I've got through this. But I didn't get through it alone. And I'd like to thank some people who dropped everything and were there for me when I needed it. So I want to give a shout out to Benny, Laura, Cooney, Kev, Sinead, Katie, Paul, Sam, my parents, my family, anyone else. If I'm forgetting someone, like, Jesus, I feel bad if I am. I bet I'll finish up taping, or as soon as this goes online, I'm like, bollocks! So I apologise if I have. I'd like to thank Joanna as well, and the Blanchardstown Therapy Centre, and the people who run Headspace too, for giving me the tools to move forward. Your product has changed my life, legitimately changed my life. And yeah, it's whatever comes from here, the good, I'll owe a debt to you guys. I'd like to thank the Lowe's who helped me out in getting this new career sorted. This is what I mean by having people around you. This is the good karma I spoke about earlier, where it's like, you know, things didn't happen the way I thought it would happen, but being a good person and having good people around me and treating people well and making friends and starting low blows, even though low blows not being full-time was what helped set me out off the deep end, making friends through low blows is what helped pull me out of it. So that's what I meant earlier when I said yes and no in terms of if I'd get good karma and whatnot, if being a good person mattered for much. It didn't get me exactly what I wanted, but it got me the tools I needed to get what I needed when things didn't pan out. I'd like to thank the listeners and the people who came to our nights, the likes of Keane and Katie as well on the flagship show, and all the rest of the Low Blow staff who none of you probably even copped that anything was going on, but you guys kept me sane. Like, hanging out with Keane and Katie every Wednesday just gave me a bit of normalcy. It gave me a bit of sanity when everything else seemed out of control, and reminded me that the world wasn't ending and that in many ways life was just continuing to go on as normal and I could be happy again. So I'd like to thank all of you out for that. You don't realise the way that you touch other people's lives, and you guys were good to me, and you guys were supportive, like even just coming tonight, even just being sound, being friendly or whatever. You don't realise the difference you can make in people's lives, and I'd like to thank you for that. So that's pretty much it. That's my story, and it's gone long, but you had to know that was coming. This is This is the Nash Podcast. This is what I do. But hopefully you've been entertained, and thank you for those of you who've managed to stay true to the end. Just hope nobody left you in the dark stuff. That's a shit time to leave. Or hope nobody had to start work around. Jesus. Tell them to come back if you know they have done. Tell them it ends positively. There's a good ending to this. I think, anyway. But before I go, I do want to leave you with this message if you ever feel the same. It's always darkest before the dawn. Life can and will go wrong. We have no control over that. But we do have control over how we react, how we move forward. Take it from someone who had every aspect of what I saw as a perfect life blow up in my face, and within a few months, a few weeks, lay in bed and saw death as the only preferable option. You are not alone. You are never alone. Help is right there at the other end of a text message or a Google search. Yes, you may need to take some responsibility. You may need to own up to some things that seem unbearable. You may need to talk about things that you don't think you have the strength to talk about. But if saying, I was wrong, or if just letting that weight off your shoulders that you've been carrying around, is that really worse than living your life in misery every day? I've done both, and I really don't think it's even a competition. It's your life. Own it. Take responsibility for your own happiness. Realize that support systems are around you. Don't be afraid to fail, because in doing so, you'll actually do your best work and get your best inspiration and learn the most lessons that will lead you to success. Then go out and make your own Rocky montage. Come back and kick life's arse. I've lived it. It's possible. Guys, if you're looking for help, the Headspace app, like I've spoke about already, and the IACP.ie is where you need to check out for counselling. Thanks for listening, guys. This has been the first episode of Nash.